The Right Call Solutions, or TRCS, was pretty much born out of our current database of clients who, in essence, really struggled with follow-up calls, which basically means that they go out and quote on a job, but they don't have the time to actually follow it up and find out any questions that their prospective client may have. So that's where TRCS was born a couple of months ago, just by a couple of strategically placed calls to their quotes that they had over the last sort of 2 months, found out reasons why they weren't buying, why they haven't followed it up within the time, and just by a few courtesy calls and a few customer service calls, we managed to generate over £35,000 for this one particular client, which is an absolutely fantastic result. What makes TRCS different? Well, of course, it's the team that make us different. There's 6 of us that work dedicated on TRCS. We've migrated a few from the Out and About, which is the sister company. But we're very customer service orientated. We don't believe in pressurising people into buying our client's proposition or appointment. We basically, through a series of fact-finding questions and finding out whether there's a need and there's a desire, then we go for the close. We're always closing, don't get me wrong, we're always out there looking for the business, but what we've often found is that if you make an appointment for the sake of making an appointment, it doesn't really go much further than sort of the rep, unfortunately, spending time going out and visiting the client, and then there's a number of reasons why they fail to turn up or don't even know about the appointment. Okay, so our appointments are very strong, but coming from not the sales point of view and the customer service point of view, we'll get far better results. At TRCS, it's not just about the telesales, it's about data collection. Clients got to almost look at the additional benefits that comes along with telemarketing, i.e. such as clean data. Email addresses, very difficult to get hold of most of the time. So that becomes, the database is yours once you've gone through the trial. So if a client decides not to go ahead, not many do, but some people, due to budget constraints or whichever reason, we give them the database. It's their database. We keep a copy, of course, but it's your database to keep, and that comes along with email addresses. The whole database is yours to keep, and don't forget as well, it's full comments and full sort of reporting on the end of each conversation that happened. So maybe they didn't want, say for instance, the prospect didn't want to be seen during the 14 days or the campaign period. You can then follow it up. Usually what happens is people will sort of make a diary call for 6 or 12 months later, depending on the package and the product that's being sort of offered at the time. So don't forget you get that as well. At TRCS, we also do a lot of email campaigns and sort of HTML prospecting. So for instance, we would usually on the first call or the second call get the information off the clients and get the opt-in to send out an email campaign. Once they open the email campaign, shortly after they'll receive a courtesy call from our clients, which is us of course. Then we follow it up. The calls are totally branded under our client's name, so it won't be TRCS they'll be called, and it will be, for instance, Out and About or any of our other clients' names and brands. So it's totally white labelled to our clients, which is fantastic additional, but it goes without saying we don't want TRCS being known. We want our clients' names being known, which is great. But we do a lot of emailing on behalf of our clients. So that's all free of charge. It comes within the price quoted. Yeah, so it's a pretty much no-brainer. In order to start the process, it's very simple. We put some strategy in place. Very much implementing the campaign is very much training within the first 2 days. of the staff. Hence the reason why we say 12-hour campaigns hardly ever work. And then we sort of run it and see what happens, and then we sort of give you feedback on a sort of weekly or daily basis, really. The guarantees that TRCS offer is pretty much if you give us a fair trial, i.e. usually about 14 days, we guarantee to give you regular feedback, whether it's daily or weekly. Usually on the end of on a Thursday or Friday afternoon, we would sit down with the client and go over the week's performance, find out what kind of issues we've got, whether there are any issues at all, find out what happened with the appointments that were already made, which is always an interesting one, and sort of gauge people's reactions to the brand. We always do, wherever possible, give constructive criticism, but what we've sometimes find is that aspirations of a 12-hour campaign is usually inflated. We're quite straightforward with somebody and say to a client, it's not going to happen instantaneous. There are appointments being made on an hourly basis or a daily basis, depending on the KPIs that we've set in place for the sales staff to do. But what we often find is that clients' expectations are quite high and usually dented because of sort of previous experience. We're quite straightforward with clients. We give them honest feedback. We don't make an appointment for the sake of making an appointment. We are very, very positive, proactive, looking for sales or appointments, depending on the type of criteria that we're setting out with the client. But we are very straightforward in saying, it's not going to happen. This campaign, you can't run a trial for 12 hours. It has to be, several days or possibly 14-day trial. If depending on the client base, we will put certain guarantees in place. Whereas if we don't met the appointments within the time frame, we will work until that objective is achieved.